Ladies and gentlemen, we're in for a real treat here on the Sports Report. Now on Sportzwire, because he's also officially our first interview for Sportzwire, and he's somebody that we've gotten to know his work here over the past several months, and he was just on the call for Odyssey Pro Wrestling, set sail, and the inaugural event there, which has really taken the wrestling world by storm here, and he's also done pretty much everything. I mean, you think about music, you think about esports. He's even dabbled in some NBA with Brooklyn's own Kyrie Irving. I mean, it's a real honor to have him here on the Sports Report and to kick things off here on the Sports Wire and all the great things he's even done, including being a two-time presenter nominee at the UK Esports Awards. I mean, it does not get any better than this, especially speaking with one of our own here in the business. And without further ado, here on the Sports Report, the number one global sports show, premier broadcaster around. Simon! Champ, how are you?
Wow, what an introduction that was. I don't think I've ever had an introduction like that. That was incredible. Thank you so much. I am very well, and yeah, man, I'm excited to get started. I'm looking forward to this interview. Thank you so much for having me on.
Simon, coming from you, because I know you do hundreds and hundreds of interviews. If you're saying that, that is definitely high praise, and this was well worth the wait and well worth the technical difficulties getting adjusted, because I feel like it took us forever here to finally push the record button here, but it is definitely well worth the wait here. But my friend, it's a tremendous honor, and obviously you've accomplished a lot in your career, and I'm sure we'll talk about a lot about those different things here. But for our worldwide audience listening here now on Sportswire, we've had the opportunity to talk over the past several months with a number of different wrestlers and people involved with Odyssey Pro Wrestling. And I know that you were on the call here this past weekend, and I'd like for you to give us your thoughts, because you're the first person that we're speaking with now that set sail has taken place, and wanted to get your perspective on being on the call here for last Saturday's event.
Oh, thank you, man. Yeah, no, the event was incredible. I'd tell you what was so beautiful about this moment is obviously wrestling shows here in the UK were put on pause for a very long time due to the current global climate, but it's been back now for a couple of weeks, and the beautiful part of getting to Morecambe here, the north of England, walking into the backstage, into the locker room area, and just seeing so many familiar faces, people I've worked with, colleagues, people I've interviewed, or wherever it might have been, and the vibe was just so beautiful. It was so energetic, so humbling. Everyone was excited to get going. Everyone wanted to support one another and elevate each other up to that next level. And for me, especially, because, you know, I've been around wrestling now for a couple of years, and my bread and butter is as an interviewer, a backstage interviewer. I started as a ring announcer, but this was my commentary debut in professional wrestling. So for me to get that support and that amount of love and energy from the locker room was such a beautiful moment for me, and great to be back. The event itself was phenomenal. It was electrifying. You know, we sold out. There were 250 lively audience members in there, you know, making some noise, and the fans were chanting all the way through. And I'll tell you what was great as well. It was quite weird at one stage, but I got told backstage, you know, by the producer. He was like, "Right, so Simon, we've given you an entrance." I was like, "Right, okay. I mean, I'm a commentator, but I'm down for this, you know." So I'm standing back of the curtain, producers kind of going through a few things, and all of a sudden I hear the ring announcer, "Please welcome our commentary team, Simon Hill and Kurt Johansson." And the pop, dude, I'm like, I'm just a commentator here, dude, but the crowd went nuts. I was just like, oh my God, like I got full goosebumps, and the smile was beaming from ear to ear. And that's how I knew we were back. You know, British wrestling is back here in Morecambe, and I just can't wait to do it all over again and to continue this journey.
Absolutely. And Simon, October is not that far away from now, so we're definitely looking forward to the future of Odyssey Pro Wrestling. But that 250 people from the videos that I saw all over Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, I really really felt it was more than that. I really felt that there was something special and electric about the event and the vibe that we saw in the Carlton, because you really think about how long it's been. We're talking almost 18 months since we were without wrestling, and especially in the British wrestling scene. And you saw raw emotion come out between the wrestlers and the fans. And I know that you have worked some of the biggest events literally in the world, but I felt in a lot of ways that Set Sail was very similar to that, just because of the electricity that A, the wrestlers had, but B, as you pointed out, the fans. Talk to me about your thoughts on that.
Oh, man, I couldn't agree more. It certainly felt like I was in a large arena with 10,000 fans, that you would get at a premier promotion event. It was loud all the way through, and they certainly made sure that they were projecting all the way through. And it did feel by more than 250 people all the way through that show. And it was great to see. And this is one thing that I want to get across to people is, yes, as talent, we have been itching to get back in the ring, to get backstage, to do what we do. But the fans have wanted this just as much. And for those, and for us to be able to deliver a show like we did on Saturday was a very humbling experience. And I'll tell you a little short story here. So after the show had finished, I come down from my commentary box, and there was this little 10-year-old kid, and he'd loved the show. He'd had so much fun, and you could tell there was a big smile. And he walked up to me with his mum, and he had a skateboard, and he had a gold little pen, and he said, "Could you please sign my skateboard for me, Simon?" And I had to hold the emotions back, man, because I just see my role in professional wrestling, or whatever I do, as just that, a role. I'm someone there to entertain you. If I connect with one person by doing that, then it's all worth it. Do you know what I mean? So for this kid to take that time to ask me to sign his skateboard, and I was able to do that and put a smile on his face, man, there is nothing more fulfilling than that kid walking away knowing that I made that evening just a little bit extra special for him. And that was such, again, an emotional, beautiful moment that solidified what we've all been waiting for, and that's the return of professional wrestling.
Absolutely. And we're very excited about the return of professional wrestling in the UK, because listen, Simon, I feel like for months I was talking about guys past matches and what would it feel like when you step out through that curtain and the first bump you take. But now that that's all out of the way, we can now talk about the future and talk about all the great things that everybody is going to do. But you said something interesting there, and I got to ask you a question on it, because you talked about how kid had a skateboard and he had the gold pen and wanted you to sign his skateboard, and how much that made you feel. Now, I know, again, you've been anywhere you could think of, whether it's Download, whether it's interviewing NBA stars, or being with the likes of Nickelback and esports awards, and you name it, you've done it all. And I'm not just saying it because the record speaks for itself. But when a 10-year-old kid asks you to sign something, I'm going to be safe to say, Simon, at Download Festival when Maiden's playing, you're not going to get asked to sign anything. I mean, it's got to make it extra special when you're at an event like this, Set Sail, where the fans see you as somebody important, as a big deal. Because again, like I said, I know you've been at all these big places, you've been a part of a lot of important things, but in this case, the fans at Set Sail at the Carlton thought you were somebody, and somebody important. How did that make you feel?
Incredibly humble. I'm always very appreciative of the position I'm in, and I do work exceptionally hard, to the point, where I've made a lot of sacrifices in my life because of working in the entertainment industry is not a normal 9-to-5 job. It requires a lot of sacrifice, and that has sometimes been a rough ride, but it's the path and journey I chose. However, when I get put in those positions of being able to make a difference to somebody's day, or somebody's event or somebody's experience, and I have that ability to make somebody happy for a split second, then I would take that any day over meeting my favorite band and being able to tell them what I think of them, or doing all this incredible stuff that you talk about. I think that is one of the most special things that you can do for anyone in life, whatever your role or job or position is in life. If you can make somebody happy within a moment, it's worth every second.
Yeah, because I would kind of think that there's almost, and I hate to put it this way, like a level of phonyism at some of these major events, because it's almost like everybody's put on a pedestal. You almost kind of know your role, no pun intended, to use a wrestling reference. But I felt like with Odyssey Pro Wrestling and some of the other companies like that, it really is a family-friendly experience. And I want to ask you, before I get into the card, maybe some of your favorite matches, because we've kind of alluded to it here, and some of these major events and major things that you've been a part of, whether it's esports, whether it's bands, whether it's even NBA stuff. I mean, you've pretty much done it all. But I was curious also for our worldwide audience listening here on Sportswire, maybe what are the differences in terms of calling these different events versus, let's say, a wrestling event like the one we saw this past Saturday called Odyssey Pro Wrestling Set Sail?
The difference, preparation is certainly the first thing. You definitely go into them with a different mindset. You know, I'm sure you're going to get my recent journey in Poland a little later. You know, that is certainly one of the biggest opportunities I've had in my career, full stop. And I approached that very different to the way that I would approach Odyssey. Now, I was asked a similar question a few days ago. And when you are a ring announcer, obviously your job is to get the facts out there, right? So, you know, you reference a talent, you know, you may have to drop in their weight or where they're from. It's all about getting the correct information. It's also doing it with conviction, you know, projecting your voice, and essentially you're a hype man almost. Whereas commentary, now this was my first gig as a commentator. I'd done football or soccer, as you guys know it, in the States many years ago. I called some non-league and low league games, and you know, that was a lot of fun, a big learning curve for me. But obviously wrestling is very, very different. So what I wanted to do, because we all know as a commentator, you're painting the picture, you're setting the scene, you're telling the story. So how do we do that? How do I do that? And how do I do that to the best of my ability and help talent tell that story? So what I would do is I would go around the locker room on Saturday, obviously before the show, hours before the show, and I would speak to each member of talent, and I would say, look, what's the story here? What's the angle? What do you want me to put over? How can I help build your story? And that's how it went. And, you know, I would take notes, and we would speak about the certain calls and the certain spots that we would have to address in a way to tell the story even further. And that's how I approach commentary at Odyssey Pro Wrestling.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's why our guest here to kick things off here on the Sports Report and on the Sportswire, Simon Hill, is one of the best in the business. And that's why we're extremely honored to have him here on the show, and also to kick off our history here on Sportswire. And I am the host of the Sports Report and the station manager here of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Brice. And of course, you can follow Odyssey Pro Wrestling on Twitter at OPW_UK. You can like him on Facebook at Odyssey Pro Wrestling. You can also follow him on Instagram at Odyssey Pro Wrestling and find out more details for their next event, which I'm sure that Simon Hill is going to be on the call with, alongside Kurt Johansson, who came on the show here last month. And of course, you can follow Sportswire now on Facebook at Sportswire Radio. You can catch us for now. We're on sportnarium.com/player, but be on the lookout here in the next coming days for an announcement regarding a website and some other details when it comes to Sportswire and some more things that we're working on. So everybody keep an eye on that. And we are talking all things related here to the world of professional wrestling, plus the career of the great Simon Hill. So you want to make sure, ladies and gentlemen, that you book Simon Hill, because he's somebody that, like I said, Jim Ross, move on over, and Tony Schiavone, move on over, Michael Cole, move on over, and certainly Michael Cole, move on over, because Michael Cole, Simon, I got to be honest with you, he's always had an annoying voice to me. For whatever reason, his voice, maybe it's that high-pitched squeal a little bit, it has always annoyed me. I know Simon's got a much better voice than that. But Simon, I was also curious when it comes to the Odyssey Pro Wrestling event, before we get into some of your career, because there's a lot to dive into. I wanted to ask you in particular if there were a favorite match or two that you enjoyed calling from this past week's show.
Oh, man. I mean, I don't think I could pick just one as the whole full card. I mean, I'll tell you what was great about this event, Tom, was that every single member of that locker room went out to put on the best show they possibly could. And that's a rare thing, to get a full card of every single person wanting to be the best that night. I enjoy calling all matches. However, I'm a big fan of women's wrestling. I feel that women's wrestling has finally started to get that spotlight it so desperately deserves. And there are some incredibly talented women out there. We had Tonga versus Jira Adams. Jira Adams is a huge powerhouse, a great talent who can also be slightly athletic when she wants to be. And we also had Tonga, who's one of the biggest smack talkers and greatest heels in British indie professional wrestling right now. She is also, incredibly athletic and very, very quick, very methodical, very clever, a little bit, she's not afraid to bend the rules. But that match was a great match. And, it had some great storytelling, and it really does set up a lot for the future of Odyssey Pro Wrestling and what is going to take place in the women's division here at OPW. Of course, the main event, we had Chris Ridgway as a surprise coming into this. Chris Ridgway, of course, one of the greatest to come out of the British scene. He's also very well travelled. Obviously been to Japan and Germany and all these incredible places. And it was great to see him in a ring. So to get to call a match with Chris Ridgway was also a very, very, very cool moment for me.
How big was it, you think, for the company to get a Chris Ridgway in the main event? Because he's really somebody, as you pointed out. I mean, he's been in the big leagues. He's been a guy that has been in the ring with legitimate superstars. I kind of think in a lot of ways, Simon, that solidifies the company's future.
Absolutely. And to have somebody like Chris there, I've worked with Chris on a few occasions. He won't thank me for telling you that we had a long 2.5 hour journey back from Liverpool down to Birmingham the one night, and it was carpool karaoke. And he won't thank me for telling you that his choice of music was Shania Twain. But that's for another day. But to get someone like Chris Ridgway in is absolutely a huge coup and a huge statement for OPW to say, look, we're here, we're serious, we are here to stay, and what we are looking to do is to be the very best. And I certainly believe that even after their first show, I will go on record now, Tom, and say that OPW within a year's time will be one of the biggest promotions in British wrestling.
Oh, I got a very good feeling about it, because listen, if you looked at the card, you talked about Tonga and Jira Adams. We talked about the main event just now with Chris Ridgway being a part of that. Obviously, RPD, the natural born fighter, RP Davis versus Scotty Rock, which was the semi-main event. The Cumbrian outlaw Rick Marcus against the Playboy Prince Lance Rivera. Two-Bit in his open challenge. I mean, listen, Two-Bit is the BWR Cruiserweight champion. He's a guy that's come on here a couple of times, and I feel like he's probably going to be a big-time player here in the near and distant future. In fact, he already is a big-time player. We saw the return of Mark Meltzer against Lucas Neon. That was a match that I was really, really intrigued about. I mean, Synergy versus Freak Show. I mean, Synergy have been a very well-traveled tag team. I mean, listen, the card itself, I mean, I think it hit a home run. It blew everybody out of the water. So I couldn't agree with you here, and we're extremely excited about the future of Odyssey Pro Wrestling. And congratulations also to General Manager Ethan Edwards and the entire team that's involved here in Odyssey Pro Wrestling. But Simon, I've been talking a lot about Odyssey Pro Wrestling and you being on the call, but I was intrigued, especially for our worldwide audience listening here on Sportswire. And how did you get involved in broadcasting?
Oh man, this is a story that goes back around 14, 15 years. So I used to listen to a radio show in the UK called Kerrang Radio, and they used to have this nighttime show called Tim Shaw's Asylum, and Tim Shaw was touted as the British Howard Stern, right? And we all know what Howard Stern was like back in the day. If you go back 15 years, he was pushing the boat. He was, he was getting himself in trouble with some of the things he was talking about. But that intrigued me. So I used to listen to this show 5 days a week. 10 p.m. I would be at my High Five. Remember those back in the day, Tom?
Yep.
I would be there from 10 p.m. till 1 a.m. listening to this show religiously. literally 5 days a week, every week. And I thought to myself, that is what I want to do with my life. That is what I want to do for a living. How do I do it? So I researched and I found out how to do it. And I went to college, started studying media. Now, what was also a bit different about this was Tim Shaw used to go on air and used to say, look, if any listeners want to come in, sit in the studio, see it all unfold, text in the studio and the producer will get in touch and blah, blah, blah. Now, I was this kid who was lucky enough back then to get the producer to call me, and I used to go into the studio every Monday. Now, you've probably seen what Howard Stern used to be like, and Tim Shaw's Asylum was very similar in terms of this wasn't just a guy speaking into a microphone. This radio show could have had its own film crew, because the guests he was having in, he wasn't just speaking to them, he was getting them to perform something that would relate to their skill set. And Tim was very clever and very good at describing and painting that picture over a microphone, essentially, on radio. And that's a very difficult thing to do. And Tim was one of the best in the country at it. And at some stage, I still can't remember how this actually happened, but the producer called me, and I wasn't working at Kerrang or anything. I was just a listener who would go in once a week, and I didn't go in for a couple of months. And the producer called me and said, we need a new runner, and we know that you know the show. Would you be interested in doing it? Well, of course, me being 19 and absolutely over the moon that Kerrang Radio want me to go and work for them, let alone the show I've been worshipping for the last couple of years. So I did, and I absolutely worked my little butt off to learn everything about radio, because this is what I wanted to do. And a small part of me regrets that I had to quit college at that time, because I was doing 5 days a week at Kerrang Radio, and that's where I saw my career. But I also think if I hadn't, would I have had the career that I've had so far? Probably not. But that's hindsight. But this was a huge breakthrough for me, and that's how I got into broadcasting. And I learned from the best in this country. Kerrang Radio at that time was loaded with some of the best presenters and the best producers in British radio. It was a commercial station broadcasting all over the country. The show I was working on, Tim Shaw's Asylum, became the most listened to nighttime radio show in the UK and was winning Sony Awards, New York Awards, Archiva Awards. And I was a part of that journey, and that was the start of my career.
Listen, Simon, that sounds a lot better than going to college or a university, because think about all that success you had, and think about being a part of that. And also when you think about Howard Stern, like a show, that sounds like a lot more fun. I'm sure you had a lot more of a good time and had a lot of fun, I'm sure, doing that, a lot of work. So I think you made the right decision, because look at all the success that you've had. And speaking of success, and I know that you have a show that's been heard in 50 countries. I mean, you take a step back and listen to something here. 50 countries. I mean, that's so many people that you may not even get a chance to ever step foot and meet. And that's a pretty surreal experience. And also, obviously, being in the top 20 in the UK and Australia. And I got to ask you, on having your own show, what's that been like? And having that heard 50 countries and being in the top 20 in different places, what has that meant to you?
Absolutely. As you said, surreal was definitely a good word to use for that. This show was born out of the pandemic, and it was a way of me being able to deliver content to people who were looking for an escape from what was going on in the real world at that time. And how could I do that? How could I have skills as a broadcaster and as an interviewer, and I work in the wrestling industry and have a lot of contacts, fortunately a lot of friends too. And that's how it all began. And you know what this is like, Tom. People don't see the non-glamorous side when your laptop is stacked on, books and chairs or whatever else. And you've got wires and cables hanging all over the place. And what they do get to see or hear is a product that will give them an escape for a short time. Hearing some fun interviews, some cool researched interviews. You learn something, or you'll laugh, or you'll have fun listening. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to bring personality out from these guys, because you know what? Yeah, I can find out where Josh Alexander wrestled when he started. I can Google that. How do I find out what he enjoys cooking and what he's not good at cooking? And of course, that was steak, but apparently now he's very good at it. But it's those sort of things that I wanted to do different. And yeah, absolutely. Did I ever think think by any stretch of the imagination it would be listened to in over 50 countries. Did I ever think that I would get into number 5 in the Apple charts in Ireland? No, absolutely not. It still baffles me that has actually been a thing. But I am also very grateful for everyone that has taken time to listen to the show, to download it, to share it, to be a part of that journey. And I am very humbled that, I was able to offer up that escape for people and hopefully entertain people along the way and, give them some cool stories, some shocking stories, some cool insights, some funny bits and bobs as well to go along with it. And it's absolutely been an amazing experience. Obviously, because of my recent journeys over to Poland, I have had to put it on hold for the last 6 weeks, but it is coming back next week. I've got some great guests lined up, which I can't wait to share with you all. So it is going to be coming back, and it's going to be coming back with a very, very, very big bang.
Well, we can't wait for that, and we're really excited about that. We cannot wait to tune in, and we are talking all things related to the career of the great Simon Hill, one of the premier commentators, announcers, interviewers, you name it, Simon Hill does it. I am the host of the Sports Report, the station manager here of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Brice, and we are talking all things related here to the career of Simon Hill and all the success that he's had. Ladies and gentlemen, you think about it, and again, take a step back. 50 countries his show is heard in. He's made the top 20 in the charts in numerous countries and all the success. I mean, listen, it's one thing if you have 2 or 3 countries listen to you, but 50, I mean, I don't know if anybody could name 15 countries, let alone 50. And so clearly Simon is doing something right. And Simon, you touched upon that Poland experience, and that's a pretty big deal. And for our worldwide audience listening here on Sportswire, I wanted to ask you what that experience has been like in traveling to Poland.
Oh, man. It came at a very pivotal point of my life. I was going through some stuff personally, and this opportunity came to me, which, again, I find incredibly honored to have. I think one of the most incredible things to happen to you as a host, a presenter, or whatever you do in your career is somebody wants to pay for you to leave the country to do work in another country. I don't think there's anything more privileged than that. I mean, they're not sourcing internally. They want to go out of the country and fly you in, put you up for a month. You're living in this country and they're going to pay you to host global shows. So I got this call and it was an email, and then I spoke to them and they sent the concept for the show. This was ESL, who are one of the biggest esports organizations in the world. I absolutely have always had ESL on my radar. I've always wanted to work for them because, as I said, they're one of the biggest in the world to do this. And I was so flattered to get this opportunity come to me. And I was flown out to Katowice, a beautiful city. It's not a tourist city. It's a very industrial business cross-uni city. And I was put up in this gorgeous hotel for a month. I remember I was speaking to a girl over there and she was like, "Oh, so where are you staying?" And I told her and she was like, "That's the most expensive place in this city." Well, let me tell you, Tom, I've stayed at some beautiful places all over the world. You know what Vegas hotels are like. They're stunning. But let me tell you, I have never been in a hotel where I've had a separate living room, a separate bedroom, 2 bathrooms, a separate segregated kitchen, and a balcony. And I had all of that. So it was incredible. And I got to wake up there every single morning in this beautiful, beautiful city, beautiful country. And I hosted 4 shows. It was a weekly show that was based around retro games across this new platform. And it was an hour-long live show. So there was no prereqs. It was all live. And per episode, we were hitting around 220,000 people. And I was very fortunate. So a little side story here. So I got the rundown sheet of the show just as I landed in Poland. And on that list was a name of a co-host, Jason Kaplan. Now, Jason Kaplan is, how can I do this in UK and American terms here? So he's like the Anton Deck of esports. He's like the James Corden of esports. He's the top of the top, right?
Okay.
So I've seen this, and I have phoned my sister in a frantic sick state for some reason and gone, I cannot, but why have they put me with Jason Kaplan? He's like the best of the best. There is no one better in this business than Jason Kaplan. Why am I with him? And it took my sister to rationalize and change my perspective and go, why don't you think of it like this? They're putting you with Jason Kaplan because they see what you're good at. They see your skill set. They see why you belong there. They're putting you with Jason Kaplan because you are good enough to host a show with Jason Kaplan. And that changed my entire experience because I then started to believe in myself and feel like I belonged. And I learned from, again, the best, the directors, some of the best directors and producers in esports, full stop, in the entire world, had been flown in for this. And, I woke up every morning with the same group of people. We'd eat breakfast together. We'd go out together. We would eat together, watch the football or soccer together. We became one big family. And when it came time to say bye, it was an emotional time because I had these new brothers. I had these new people that I was looking out for, that I was excited to see every day and spent every day with. So it was an amazing experience for many reasons, Tom, not just professionally, but certainly personally, it did wonders for me. Out there, I was going to the gym every day anyway, and physically, I have now been in the best shape of my life. And at 34, I feel like I really am starting to kick my career off into the best direction that it's ever been in.
Well, that's saying something because you've done a lot, my friend. You've accomplished a lot and you've had a lot of success. So if you're saying that, I think the sky is not only the limit, it might even be exceeded. So this is reasons why we're really excited to have you on here and talk about your career. But I want to ask you something because this is something that's been always a festival that has fascinated me, especially if you're a hard rock and a heavy metal fan. And that's the Download Festival. In fact, we've interviewed a couple of different bands on the show here over the past few weeks that are in the hard rock and the heavy metal world, especially out in the UK and also in other parts of the world like Switzerland and Italy. And you think about Download and you think about the bands that have either headlined or been a part of Download. You're talking about Judas Priest, you're talking about Slipknot, you're talking about Iron Maiden, you're talking about Guns N' Roses, you're talking about Disturbed, Korn. I could go down the list and pretty much name every hard rock and heavy metal band that's been a part of the scene the past 30 or 40 years, Megadeth, Lamb of God, and so on and so on. And what was that like in terms of working the Download Festival?
Oh man, what an experience. So, I guess the best story I can tell you here is both emotional and very heartwarming. So I was backstage and I had previously, years before, worked the WWE tour. And when they came to the UK, I went around and I was building the rings and stuff like that. And so at Download, I was backstage and I saw Chris Jericho because Fozzy had just come off stage. And I just went up to him, I was like, dude, great set. And he's like, oh man, how's it been? We haven't seen you for a few years. Because he was on that tour. And I remember the story with Chris Jericho is he forgot his pass to get in Leeds. So he had to have mine to get in the building, and then we sorted him another one. And that was a very long story. But so we talked back and forth, just for, only for like a minute, no longer. And next up on the bill was Alter Bridge. Now, I will tell this as short as possible. Alter Bridge have gotten me through some of the toughest times in my life. Alter Bridge are a very special band to me. I toss between them and Maiden as my favourite band for different reasons. Alter Bridge came on stage and I'm standing on stage just to the side there, and I look to my left and I've got Michael Starr from Steel Panther. His left, Chris Jericho. There's one more, I can't remember. To my right, and standing next to me, is Liv Tyler, because Aerosmith are playing later that night. And we're watching the gig, Alter Bridge are just tearing it up. And I can't believe that I am standing on stage watching Alter Bridge. And there's a photo on my social media of this as well. And you can just see me standing on stage. You can see the Ferris wheel in the background, 60,000 fans. And me and Liv Tyler were taking a video at the same time. And it was during Blackbird. Now, Blackbird is a very powerful song. And in multiple interviews, Miles Kennedy has said that everyone's got a different meaning for it. And I certainly do have my own personal meaning for that. And she said to me, this song always gets me. I said, like, I have certainly gotten emotional at this song, multiple times. And, I was trying to hold it together. And I was just like, yeah, it's such a beautiful song, isn't it? And, Alter Bridge are my favorite band. And I expressed to her, like, the same as what I am too. I can't believe I'm standing on stage at Download Festival watching my favorite band play my favorite song. And now, usually, Tom, I'll be honest, I'm very confident with women. I can handle a conversation. Now, Liv Tyler, out of the blue, gave me a hug. And she was like, she hugged me and went, oh, that is so sweet. Oh, you must be feeling so happy right now. And I closed up like a little child and went, thanks. I just didn't know how to respond to her. But that was such a beautiful, heartwarming moment. Not only to be standing on stage with an incredibly talented actress who we've all watched on TV at some point. I'm on stage watching my favorite band, playing my favorite song. I'm also joined on stage with one of my favorite wrestlers of all time and the guitarist of a band that I have listened to for years. So that was and will forever be one of the greatest, most memorable moments of my life, for many, many reasons. So working Download Festival was an honor and a privilege.
Well, Simon, it sounds like you can almost die and go to heaven after that. I mean, it's almost like you cannot get better than
absolutely.
that. I mean, listen, you think about Chris Jericho, right? You talk about Liv Tyler, who was every guy's dream in the 1990s. You talk about even Steel Panther. I mean, Steel Panther aren't a bad band in their own right. You also talk about Miles Kennedy, who arguably, I think, has been the best singer, I would say, post-90s, just because of what his range is and what he's been able to do. And look, Slash has even played with him. I mean, I think that some of his best work is actually with Slash. I mean, so Miles Kennedy and Alter Bridge, and I've always felt that Alter Bridge was kind of the best traditional hard rock band. I want to say, again, post-90s, early 2000s, just because what they were able to do. And I actually think that Mark Tremonti's best work was actually in Alter Bridge rather than Creed, because I think about Creed. Yes, Creed had all the hits and they sold millions and millions, but Alter Bridge, to me, I think was really what the band was trying to intend from the members of Creed. And I think that I could clearly see why Alter Bridge was a favorite band of yours. And I also got to throw a Maiden reference in because Iron Maiden has a brand new album that's coming out here in a couple of weeks. So obviously you mentioned you mentioned the creme de la creme, but there's another band that I know that you have some experience with that, to say the least, is a very polarizing band. You either love them or you hate them. And I think you know the band I'm talking about, and that's Nickelback. And I know, again, Nickelback, you get in the hard rock and heavy metal world, you get such different opinions. I mean, for example, Jerry Cantrell of Alice in Chains loves Nickelback. He was on tour with Nickelback. Then there are a lot of other people, conversely, who hate Nickelback. So personally for me, and I'd actually asked this question to Scotty Rock when he came on a couple of months ago, because I'm sure you're aware that he's a singer in his own band, and he actually kind of got into Nickelback again. So I'm sure that Scotty probably wouldn't want to acknowledge that again, but he did mention that for us here on the show a few months back. So I got to ask you then, what was it like working with Nickelback?
Oh, man, so much fun. There are stories I can't tell, but yeah, absolutely incredible. Now, look, I think the hate with Nickelback is just because it's cool to hate Nickelback. I don't think it's because of any other reason, because if we think about their music, I mean, their first 4 albums were phenomenal. They were great. I mean, Follow You Home, The Long Road, How You Remind Me, and even some of the ones after that were very good. But like a lot of bands who are around a long time, very few stick to what they were known for because they feel like they have to grow with the times, right? Very few bands have been successful at staying the way they were all those years back. Metallica, Maiden, just some examples. But yeah, working with those guys was so much fun. And, I toured all through the UK with them, and getting to know the guys was incredible. Chad was always just so humbling. And I remember I can't remember where we come from. I don't know if it was Sheffield. And we come to Birmingham. Well, that's my hometown. And I'm not going to attempt a Canadian accent here, but Chad basically was like, so, right, this is your hometown. So, like, you got to show us all the cool bars. We want to go to, we want to go and see some cool stuff. And I'm paraphrasing because there is a lot that I can't repeat. But, it was an incredible time. And we went out a couple of times. There was a few of us that went out with the guys and we hit some bars and we had a great time. And it was just such a cool environment to be in. There was no ego. There was no look at me, look who I am. Like everyone was just so relaxed and so chilled. And I've been on tours with artists who are famed for that ego, but this certainly wasn't one of them.
Well, when you think about Nickelback, to me, I've always equated them, Simon, to almost a Canadian Bon Jovi, where they've probably got like maybe 13, 14 hit singles throughout the world. They probably sold, 40, 50 million albums. They're probably the highest selling band, again, in the past 20 years. They've got countless hits. But again, if you're a fan of rock and metal, you kind of almost discount them. But there are very few bands that have achieved the success that Nickelback has had all time. And I couldn't agree with you more. There are very few bands, if you think about it, that have been able to maintain that success and keep the band intact. I mean, I think about Korn, I think about Metallica, I think about Iron Maiden. Rush was able to do it for a very long time. I mean, AC/DC, you could kind of count. I mean, Ozzy, it's really a very few select bands. Slipknot I throw in there, Disturbed I would throw in there, but there isn't too many bands that have been able to achieve what Nickelback has done. I mean, even a band like Def Leppard has changed a couple of different times in terms of their music and what they were looking to accomplish after Pyromania and Hysteria and Adrenalize. So you got to give Nickelback credit here at the end of the day, and that's why we're very honored to be talking with Simon Hill here for a few more minutes and talking all things related to his decorated career and also Odyssey Pro Wrestling's inaugural event set sailing. I am the host of the Sports Report and the station manager here of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Brice, and we're very honored that Simon is our first interview now as Sportswire Radio. We used to be a thing called Sportnarium, but we are now Sportswire, and Simon Hill is exactly what we're looking for when it comes to the idea of Sportswire, giving you hard-hitting live content plus on direct in-demand interviews with some of the most well-known people around the world. Simon, I got to ask you this question because I'm sure you get asked this question a lot. And what did it mean to you to be a two-time presenter nominee at the UK Esports Awards?
Oh, man, I don't even know where to begin with this one. Yeah, so I have been asked it a few times, and every time I'm like, how do I start it? And wow. I mean, I work exceedingly hard, but I never expect to be decorated or put into those leagues with some of the people that I have been. It was a very, very special moment for me to have that notoriety of, look, he's doing something really good and we want to put that on him. And to be amongst people like Frankie Ward, who is one of the best around the world at what she does. This woman has hosted at E3 and Gamescom and all these incredible things and some of the biggest esports events in the world. And she's done it. And I was in the same category as her and three other guys. So I was so flattered and honored and privileged and humbled to be included in that list. And to have people vote for you, Tom, is weird because they are taking their time to go, we believe what you do is really good. And we're going to take that time, that 30 seconds or a minute, to vote for you to be nominated for Presenter of the Year. And to now say that I am a two-time Presenter of the Year nominee, there's not many people that can say that, Tom. And I am privileged that I can say that.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, Simon. I couldn't say it, and I'm happy that I've gotten to speak with somebody who has been a part of that, because that is certainly rarefied air, and very few people get that opportunity to do that. And speaking of people who are in rarefied air, and I know that you had this opportunity, especially for some of my friends here in the Big Apple here in New York City, would be very curious about your experiences with them. And what was it like interviewing Kyrie Irving?
Oh, man. Yeah, that was incredible. So I remember getting this call, and now I'm a big NBA fan anyway, big Lakers fan. I've gone through the good and the bad with them. Next season's going to be interesting because, it looks like we're hugging the retirement home, but hopefully, Westbrook and LeBron and Anthony Davis can all make it work and Melo and stuff. So we'll see how that goes. But Kyrie Irving was somebody I'd followed from a rookie. I always thought, he was destined for stardom because of how good he was. You know, he was almost like a mini Kobe as a rookie. And I got this call that Celtics and Sixers were coming to London, and I was asked if I'd be interested in doing a live interview with Kyrie Irving for the NBA. And of course I said yes. How could you not? And I was over the moon. There's a lot of red tape you have to pass through with this. So even though I was asked by the NBA to do this and 2K as well, we still had to submit the questions. We went back and forth with the NBA for them to approve and things like that. And then when it came to the interview, Kyrie walked in, we shook hands, did our introduction. We both got mic'd up, and we rolled with it. And it was a great experience. Kyrie he'd landed from Boston, went straight to practice, and then straight to this interview. So as you can imagine, you know, he was a little drained and probably needed an hour's sleep, but you know, it was great. It was such a wonderful experience. And then I remember, so I was a little bit naughty, and I remember speaking to PR guy at the NBA, and I said, look, you know, obviously the NBA stars are really famous for having personal handshakes, you know, I want to do one live on air. And he was like, no, like absolutely not, you know, I don't think it will work, I don't think it will look great. I was like, okay. And it came to the end of the interview and was still rolling live, and I was just like, I'm just gonna do it. And I said, right, Kyrie, now we know that in the NBA, you know, everyone's got their own personal handshake. I think this interview's gone really well. We've had a good time. We've had a lot of fun here. We've been playing some NBA 2K whilst talking, and I think we can get our own personal handshake. So whenever we see each other in the future, we can just go straight in for our handshake. And he was like, okay. I was like, so how do we start? How do we start the process of getting our own? And he talked me through it. You know, we did this little skit kind of thing of like, he was like, right, so you sit back, you take a deep breath, then you kind of do this, and it was all live, and it looked great. And we came off, as soon as we came off air, the NBA guys came up to me and was like, oh, that was really good. Yeah, I really like that bit at the end as well with the handshake. I was just like, oh, great, man. Oh, yeah, you know, I like to push the boat occasionally, Tom, and if I can get away with things, I will definitely try.
Well, listen, you went with your gut, and what do they always say? When you go with your gut is always right. So in this case, you made the right call, because even though they were telling you, don't do it, it won't go over well, you actually went with your gut and you made the right call. And that's why, listen, you've pretty much done it all, my friend. But there was something else that you did some reintroductions for, almost going to your roots for him. We had spoke with a couple of wrestlers that were a part of the LWF Slamaganza, which was actually the week before Odyssey Pro Wrestling. And the LWF is a really important little wrestling federation here in the UK. It has a training center, it has matches and different events they put on every couple of weeks. It's run by some really fine people. Carl Clinch is the world champion there, a number of different people. We actually had on somebody a few weeks back who was in a match, and his name was David Getz, who I'm sure you're familiar with. So I wanted to ask you, for a worldwide audience listening, what was it like doing ring introductions for the LWF Slamaganza?
Oh man, that was incredible. It was a lot of fun. I remember, so this was a very last minute thing. So the ring announcer who was meant to be doing it was double booked, and we're friends anyway. And he messaged me and said, "Si, could you do this? Could you step in for me?" And I was like, "Yeah, no problem." And we discussed it, and I went up to Lancashire, and do you know what? That was another one. There's a photo of me online from this event that was captured by an incredible photographer, a very talented man, Gray Davidson, I think his last name is. Kill me if I've got that wrong. And this photo shows me walking through the curtain and having the biggest smile on my face. You can just see my face lighting up. And that is because this was my first show back. And I walked through the curtain to 200 plus loud, lively crowds, fans just excited to be back themselves, all excited. And there was, what you couldn't see is a lot of them were stood on their feet as I'd walked through the curtain. And that's why my face is beaming, because I'm happy to be back. I'm happy to see all these amazing faces smiling and be happy and applauding and standing on their feet as I'm walking through the curtain. So it was great. And you mentioned David Getzke there, an incredible young talent. Saw him at Odyssey, was actually helping with the ring and stuff. And, you know, it's always great to see people like that who are so positive, so energetic, just want to get involved and get on the card. Not just that, but when you watch them in the ring, you can really see them going places. performances, you know what I mean? And David Getzky is such a talent. I think his opponent that night was Nathan Gunn, if I'm correct.
Yep.
And again, that match, I remember watching that match, and it was one of the trainers who I sat next to, and he turned around and said to me, "Those two will be future stars of this British scene." I couldn't agree more, because they put on an absolute spectacle for a family-friendly promotion. They really pushed the boat out, and they made a name for themselves that night. They really did go out there and put on something special.
Oh, they sure did. And I got to be honest with you, Getzky has won me over, and I'm sure he's listening to this. And he was a guy going into his match with the scenario of Nathan Gunn that I think I was all the way Nathan Gunn, but I think he won me over just in terms of what he can do in the ring and how he comes across. And he's definitely going to be a somebody. He already is a somebody, but he's definitely going to go on to bigger and better things. But before I get your closing thoughts here and ask you on one or two moments that stand out most in your career, I mean, I could pretty much talk to you all day, Simon, about all the different things you accomplished here. I mean, you pretty much, I got like 50 other things I could ask you about in terms of all the things that you've done. And I wanted to ask you one more thing when it came to Odyssey Pro Wrestling before I get closing thoughts and one or two moments that stand out most in your career on that. You were on the call with Kurt Johansson, and obviously Kurt Johansson in his own right has established himself in the world of professional wrestling, is interviewing a number of different people all across the world, and even some guys who were in the WWE. And I wanted to ask you, since again, you had talked about the fact this was the first time that you were actually calling a match, what was it like being on the call with Kurt Johansson?
Oh man, a lot of fun. We both kind of went into this a little bit blind almost, because we were new to commentary, both of us, and we supported one another. Now, what was beautiful, now this kind of goes back to the experience I had in Poland as well, was when I stepped on set with Jason Kaplan in Poland for ESL. We met an hour before we went live, and I have never had chemistry like that before. It was instant, and it was rewarding, and it was beautiful. The same with Kurt Johansson, is we have known of each other through the podcast world. Obviously, he's probably known a bit more about me than I have him with what I've managed to achieve so far in professional wrestling. But we had a talk the night before, and we met again about an hour and a half before we went live, went through a few notes, and the chemistry was instant. He had figured out when to react to my play-by-plays, and I figured out when to drop in, the JR-esque kind of banter with his color commentary. And he was playing the heel commentator. So obviously the heel, he loves them. So it's my job as the face to react to that. And we seem to have had that down after the first match. So yeah, I think we put on a good show for our first one, and it can only get better. It was a great experience, and we're both very well researched, very well informed professionals who know what we want and know what we're doing. And I think that will shine through the more we continue to do this.
Oh, absolutely. And Kurt knows his stuff when it comes to the world of professional wrestling. And I think, once again, this shows you the credibility that Odyssey Pro Wrestling has for an inaugural event put together an announce team of Kurt and yourself, Simon, who are really experienced and knowledge in the wrestling business. I mean, you think about what the both of you have accomplished here in terms of wrestling and outside the wrestling world. I mean, it's really second to none. I mean, this is, I think, again, another reason why you nailed it when it comes to Odyssey Pro Wrestling. In a year from now, it's going to be right up there as one of the premier wrestling companies, not just in the UK, but in the world. In such a short amount of time, you look at the success that they've done. I also want to give a huge shout out to Lucy Simons, who was doing some interviewing backstage. I know she was a part of the event, and she's another person I think that you're going to want to keep an eye on. She's also president of the Lancaster University Pro Wrestling Society, and so many people that have been a part of Odyssey Pro Wrestling and that have made it such a success. And I want to congratulate and acknowledge them. And we really jumped at the idea of getting on board and talking about Odyssey Pro Wrestling at the very beginning. So we're very fortunate. That just says we're very fortunate to have gotten the opportunity to speak with you, my friend. But before I get your closing thoughts here, and I know, Simon, we've talked about like 7 different moments in your career that stand out most, and I'm probably missing, like I said, at least like 40 or 50 more. But for our worldwide audience listening here on the Sportswire, you got to give me 1 or 2 moments that stand out most in your illustrious career so far.
Oh, man, I don't even know where to start with this. What a question. I'll tell you what one of them is, Tom. It goes back to something I briefly touched on earlier. One of the highlights of my career is being able to connect with people. He's giving people an escape. So whether they're watching me, one of the biggest esports platforms in the world, or they're listening to my podcast or listening to me live on radio, wherever it might be, one of the highlights of my career is knowing that I entertained someone that day. I gave someone an escape from whether they're going through tough time struggles or, the world is not being quite fair to them at that point. And I was able to give them a reason to detach themselves from that for a short period. We go back to that 10-year-old kid who asked for a signature. I was able to make that kid's day just a little bit more special by taking the time to do that. Walking through crowds, just being asked for selfies and photos and taking the time to do that for paying fans who are invested in what I'm doing for some reason. So one of the highlights of my career is being an outlet for entertainment and being an escape. So that's definitely the first one, I think.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, they say a rising tide lifts all boats, and Simon Hill has been that rising tide that is going to lift many people's boats, and I'm sure he's going to sign many more skateboards. He's going to take many more selfies. He's going to be a presenter nominee many more times at the UK Esports Awards. He is going to do many, many more ringside introductions. He's going to call many more matches. He's going to be a part of many, many great tours. And he's also going to have his show heard in another 50 countries, I'm sure, because he is definitely somebody that is the example and a definition of a rising tide that lifts all boats. And that is why we are very honored to have him here on the Sports Report to kick off the introduction of the name Sportswire Radio here. So obviously couldn't think of a better person for us to be able to do that with him. Simon, I want to give you the floor, my friend. I want to give you any closing thoughts, anything you want to share to our worldwide audience listening here on Sportswire. I also want you to plug all of your social media so we can keep up to date with all the great things that you're doing, and anything you want to say to your many fans out there, please do. So I want to turn it over to you. I want to give you the floor. I want to give you any closing thoughts, and please plug all of your social media so we keep up to date with all the great things that you are doing, and the floor is yours, my friend.
Thank you so much. That's very, very kind of you. I'll get the social media out of the way first. So Simon H Official on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I do have TikTok, but I don't use it. Obviously, you can keep it locked across any streaming platform, whether you use iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, whatever it might be. Any streaming platform in the world, it is available to listen on. Of course, you've got some great interviews there from some of the best in the world, whether that be from WWE, even NWA. We've obviously got Ring of Honor stars, Impact champions, AEW stars, many, many more. And there's some really cool stories in there. One of my favorites is when the Von Erichs invited me over to Hawaii to surf with them. So I'm definitely going to take them up on that opportunity one day. So yeah, that's Keep It Locked with Simon Hill, available across all major streaming platforms. Of course, we have the merch as well, Simon Hill and Keep It Locked merch, which you can grab at Wrestle Merch Central. That's Wrestle Merch Central for your official merchandise. You got everything from there: tees, joggers, jumpers, beanies, hoodies, and many more stuff, mugs and everything in between. As for the floor, look, it's been a tough 18 months for a lot of us. I have certainly gone through a lot of personal struggles myself. I have been surrounded by some incredible people who have pulled me out of that. One of them being my sister, Dawn, who I don't think I would still be here if it wasn't for her. And that's the truth of the struggles that some of us have gone through. I am currently house sitting for two very, 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 very talented individuals. They're both in very popular bands here in the UK. Those two people are very close friends of mine as well. Their bands Blue Nation and Mimi Detroit, both lead singers of those bands. And I'm house sitting for those. And again, those are two people who have helped me get through the toughest of times. And the reason I'm saying this is because don't be scared to reach out. It's okay. It is cliche, but it's okay to not be okay. And the most important thing is we stick together, we stay strong together, we help one another. There is a lot of hate in this world. And if we stick together and we push one another, we'll get through it and we'll come out the other side with those bright smiles that are painted across my social media. I want everyone to remember that you are important. You do matter. What you do today matters. So make it count, because your smile will make someone else smile, and that will make someone else smile. And that's important, because we all just want to smile. We all want to be happy. We all want a good life. And whatever you do in your career or in your daily activities, make it count, make it important to you, and make whatever you do today worth your time and worth your effort, because you are number one and you are important. As for this podcast, I want to thank you again, Tom, for having me on. You've put me over so much, and I think you've oversold me, but I really appreciate it. I really do. I always get very humble with these sort of opportunities, and for when people want to speak to me about my career, there's confusion and also a satisfying humbleness there, that I can connect with people in a way that will make a difference. And to have these beautiful experiences of being able to appear on other people's shows is a wonderful thing. So thank you so much for having me on. What you do is incredible. I want to keep hearing more of it. I will just say this, out of all the shows I've been on, I think during the pandemic, I've been around 10 or 11. You are the most well-researched I think I've ever come across. So please keep doing what you're doing, because there are some incredible interviewers out there. You look at people like Alicia Toot and Chris Van Vliet. You, my friend, have that level of research in you. So please keep doing what you're doing. A fantastic show, and I'm very honored to have been a part of it. So thank you very much.
I can't thank you enough for those very kind words, because I'm nowhere near in those individuals' categories, but I certainly appreciate the very kind words. And these are reasons why everybody needs to check out Simon Hill and his shows and all the great stuff that he's going to be involved in the world of professional wrestling. I mean, I'm most impressed, I think, by the Nickelback story. I think the Nickelback story has me most impressed, because I feel like Nickelback, I've mentioned in interviews like 3 or 4 different times with like different bands, and obviously Scotty Rock, we spoke about Nickelback. And come to think of it real quick, I didn't like Nickelback so much, I think, as a kid, because we're about the same age. I think in high school it was like unpopular to like Nickelback, but if you think about it, they do have a few songs that are okay. And little known fact, Dimebag Darrell actually plays song on a Nickelback song, Side of a Bullet. So yeah, I mean, if it was good enough for Dimebag Darrell, Dimebag Darrell to me was probably the greatest heavy metal guitarist post Eddie Van Halen. I mean, Nickelback can't be that bad, and Jerry Cantrell isn't too bad in his own right. I mean, he likes Nickelback. So at the end of the day, maybe Nickelback aren't so bad. Maybe when we're like 50-something years old, kind of like 20 years from now, we'll look back upon them a little more fondly, maybe how like people are looking for whatever reason more fondly toward Limp Bizkit now. Because if you think about it, like Limp Bizkit, when we were kids, because like I said, we're about the same age. In high school, I always thought Limp Bizkit, they were the poser band, rap metal, Fred Durst. But now everybody our age, Simon, I know I'm going off topic, everybody our age loves Limp Bizkit. Oh, Limp Bizkit, they were great. The 90s, the early 2000s, new metal, rap metal. And I guess things come around. I think in one day, like I said, about 15 years, everybody's going to be like, oh, I really miss Nickelback and how many hits they had and how you remind me, and Photograph and Rockstar. So things do come around, I guess.
Look, they had some, they do. They had some great songs, and they are great guys as well. And do you know what? When they're live, they put on a really good show. I really enjoyed watching them live. And do you know what? If you thought the Nickelback story was cool, dude, I can tell it you off air, but we didn't get around to talking about the time I met Alter Bridge. There was a lot of emotion and a lot of cool stuff that happened there.
Oh, I'm sure. Listen, I'm sure you had a lot of stories that you probably couldn't even tell off air when it comes to some of these bands, especially one like Alter Bridge.
We'll save it for part 2 maybe in the future, because it's definitely a story that can be told. It was a beautiful moment, and to the point where Miles Kennedy singled me out during the gig, and it was that moment actually beats almost. Does it beat? Yeah, it does beat Download. Yeah.
Boy, I think that's going to definitely be something we're going to look forward to in part 2. And I'm looking forward to that, my friend. Keep up the great work and congratulations on all the success. And we'll speak with you soon.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tom. Really appreciate it.
As we're here on the Sports Report, the number one level sports show with one of the premier commentators around. And that is the great As I am the host of the Sports Report and the station manager here of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Brice. And stay tuned for more hard-hitting analysis here on Sportswire, as we also have closing music from the legendary Joe Della Sleepy Hollow to follow. Plus, right after me, we have those sit-down marks to talk all the latest happenings in the world of professional wrestling. Plus, I go live, baby, Friday Night Live here, 10 p.m. Eastern Time. So stay tuned for that, as we were just with extraordinary commentator, interviewer, jack of all trades, master of all of them, the legendary Simon Hill. So stay tuned here for more hard-hitting analysis here on Sportswire Radio.